Sure. Hi, everybody. I love how all the heads come up. Good morning. Welcome to our session, Tips for Getting More Out of Salesforce. I'm Toya Gatewood, a Salesforce MVP, a consultant at Slalom Consulting, and I have about 9 years of Salesforce experience.
And I'm Rebecca Lammers. I'm a solution architect at Slalom Consulting with Toya out of the DC area. And I've been doing Salesforce for about 7 years doing implementations, and I have about 13 years of CRM experience in general.
All right, let's get started. So we already introed ourselves, so we can just skip that part. All the good stuff. There you go. All right, so Rebecca and I have sort of 4 things that we've bucketed together as tips for people to get more out of Salesforce. So the first one we're going to touch on today is figuring out what you need.
So one of the things that I think can be a little overwhelming, especially if you're new to Salesforce, is what types of licenses you need for what types of features, right? So we've got Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Community Cloud, Commerce Cloud, every acquisition. And as Mark and Parker go on these buying sprees, it's really confusing to know what it is that you need to buy. Do you need to buy all of it? No. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do is, well, first talk to your AE. They do have license comparison charts where it actually shows what types of objects you can get for what type of license. The other thing that I think not all people know is you get access to the case object with the Sales Cloud license out of the box. The Service Cloud one is if you want to do console. That's the real trick. So some other things that can be nuanced there. And then the other option that I would encourage everyone to do is go look at Trailhead and look at all the intro to different clouds. So there's the Sales Cloud, Service Cloud. They're all like 10 to 15 minutes each. And it can give you a good baseline of what types of access and objects you might need for your particular company. So that's it. Figure out what you need first.
Yes. And in line with that, in terms of the additions, so you mentioned Essentials, Professional, what's it?
Enterprise?
Enterprise.
We practiced for y'all, don't
And Ultimate, you can always go up. So you can go from Professional to Enterprise, but you can't go back down. So that's something that you may not know, may not be aware of. Your AE may not think to tell you that. But once you lock into a higher level edition, you can't go back down. So think about that as you're making your decisions. You can always build up, but you can't go back down.
And for anyone who's trying to figure out how you would go back down, you have to spin up a new org in the different edition, and then you have to do a migration. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. It's super complex. Don't do it unless you absolutely have to.
Not recommended. So invest in and empower your admin. So if you are an admin or if you're managing admins, it's so important to make sure that you're supporting your admin. So how do you do that? You invest in their education. Send them to the classes, support their certification goals, send them to conferences like Dreamforce or even the smaller, more regional ones like Midwest Dreaming, and then make sure that they have time to not just build what you need, but then to support the infrastructure that's been built. Salesforce is a living, breathing organism. It's not a set it and forget it. So they need time to document the org. They need time to make sure they've fleshed out the practices that they need to import into the org to make sure that what they're building is sustainable for the long term, not just for right now.
Raise your hand if you're an admin. All right, so everybody with your hand down, I'm talking to you. So you guys are the ones that are there to support them. And don't forget that 3 times a year, they have hundreds of pages to read because Salesforce is always pushing new releases and changes. And then they have to think about whether or not that works for your company. Is there code that they have to deprecate because now they've come out with a new feature that replaces things declaratively? There's a lot going on for the admins. So just make sure that you buy them coffee every single day and just support them. And if they come to you asking for training, it's for you. It will pay you back in dividends.
Yeah. There are so many features that we have to keep up on as admins and as consultants too.
And developers. I haven't forgot about y'all.
Yes. Not leaving you guys out. So make sure that they do have that time. I think one of the things that I've seen in my career is orgs are not documented. So how many people have an org where custom fields have been created with no description and no help text? And the person that built it is gone. And so nobody knows what that field is for. So do your future self a favor. Make sure you're documenting that org, and make sure your admins have time to go in and do that. So if you're in an org in a situation like the one I just described, you need to carve out time every week to do documentation. When I was an admin, I spent 2 hours every Friday working on my documentation because I came into an org that had 3 million characters of code and a ton, I think 450 fields on the opportunity. None of them had descriptions. Nobody knew what they were for, but they were a good idea at the time.
Yeah, you needed them.
Yeah, sure.
And it was obvious in the way that it was named. You don't need a description, right? Well, we're all going to remember what that one was.
And totally.
Custom field 2.
Yeah, confession. So I've built fields in the past, like, of course, only an idiot wouldn't know what this field is for. 6 months later, I was the idiot, right? Like, I don't know.
Why are you saying idiot and pointing at me?
I mean, sorry, friend. Have you not done this? I think we're all guilty, right? You're in a rush, you're trying to do stuff. Just take the time to do it. Your future self will thank you. The admin who will come after you've been promoted to a great new job, they will also thank you rather than cursing you. Because I've done that too.
And here's my other trick. When it comes to process automation, we have things where process builders kicking off a flow, doing this headless trigger, and there's just a lot of sequences and steps. I put in the description of each of those process automation tools what they're doing. So I'll call them by name. This workflow rule named this does these things, so that when I'm in the flow trying to debug or troubleshoot something and I realize it's actually related to something else, I don't have to go in the setup menu and look in every single possible place that might be connected to this flow.
Yeah.
So that'll save you a ton of time just having the same description documented on each of those pieces.
Yeah. So, embracing Salesforce and accountability.
Yeah, so this one is a fancy way to say you have to have governance. There needs to be a process within your organization that supports all of the cool tech that you're doing. It goes hand in hand with documentation, but this is more in the beginning. When you're getting sign-off or buy-in from your company and the stakeholders, you should have some sort of an official process where you bring your great ideas back from Dreamforce to, we'll call it like an IT steering committee. There should be some group of invested business people who have the budget to help support your dreams, and they should vote on the priorities that you have. Because you're gonna come back with hundreds of ideas and things that you could do and spend your time on, but it's important to get the business to buy in on it. And then it's really important after you get the buy-in to come back at the next meeting and then show them all the things you did. Yeah. So that'll lead to the promotion that Toya was talking about. And so all of that is considered governance. And there's actually a Trailhead on it that's really great. So for anybody who's never heard that term before, I would go to Trailhead and check out governance. There's a whole model on how to establish that within your company. And even if the words sound a little mature or it sounds like it's a big enterprise solution and they're referencing VP of sales and CIO and things like that, if you don't have those people, what you're looking for is, if it's a Sales Cloud implementation, who's the sales manager, who's that top salesperson? That's your big stakeholder on that side. Service Cloud, same story. And then someone to represent IT's interests so that you guys can all have candid conversations about what is the company's strategy and how is Salesforce going to help get you there. And that's all considered governance.
Yeah. And I think sort of tying into the documentation, we should have mentioned this when we were talking about the previous topic. So how do people document? Like, where do you get started? So one of my favorite free apps from the App Exchange is called Field Trip. So if you're in an org and you have no idea if any of this data is good, even if the field is populated, download Field Trip. You can run an analysis on any object that exists in your org, and it will tell you what percentage of the records that exist in Salesforce have data in that field. So that would be an easy way to figure out if there's a field in there that has this 3% populated with data, you probably don't need it anymore. So that would be a good way to start narrowing that down. So that's one of my favorite ones. It's one of yours.
And then adding to that one, for anyone who has record types on the object, sometimes the 3% this field is filled out doesn't really help me because it turns out it's 100% filled out on that one record type for that one business unit. So you can actually add a little SOQL query that says where record type equals and just throw that ID in there, and then it'll give you a return that says 3% total, 97% for accounting, 0% for sales because it's not on their page layout. So there's like one more nuance to that one that makes it really effective. The second thing that goes hand in hand with that is Metadata Search. So that's another free app exchange product you can install. And what that one lets you do is search for any field, and it'll tell you where it's referenced. Is it in a formula field? Is it in a process builder? Is it in a trigger? Because once you've got that field trip result that says it's 0% filled out and you want to delete it, it might be tied to some sort of process automation in your org, and that'll save you a ton of time because it'll just tell you where to go look. And that way you don't have to spend all your time clicking around the setup menu trying to find where this field might be referenced in your 3 million characters of code.
And growing. Another favorite, it's a new entrant to our ecosystem. It's called Speckit, S-P-E-K-I-T. And so in addition to your help and description fields, this allows you to use in-context help, so you can add videos. So if you have users that say, what does this term mean? I don't get it. And you get the same question over and over again from your users, especially for new people that are coming in. You want your salespeople to be able to hit the ground running. You can download this app. It is a freemium model, and you can add videos, additional documentation, PDFs, to help your user understand within context. And they also just released an Outlook plugin too. So if they are typing that term in an email, they can have this sidebar that also pops up what that term means in your business. So it's a really great add-on, and they are over in the Customer Success Expo too. So if you're struggling with documentation and helping your users, that would be a really great one to add.
And then the final app, and we're not paid for any of this unless any of the companies we just referenced are here and would like to. Just kidding. The last one is Elements Cloud. So the website is elements, plural, .cloud, C-L-O-U-D. This one is one of my favorite tools. It's free. It's like a Visio type of online business process mapping tool. And what makes it really great is when it comes to documentation, I'm writing the business thing that's supposed to happen, and then underneath it, I'm tagging what objects I built it on. So if I'm doing my process mapping just to do the BA stuff that you have to do to get the requirements to build it in Salesforce, I save myself a step by also saying where I did it. So the next time sales comes to me and says, I want to tweak this process, I want to have something different happen, I go back to my map and I can see where I built it. Just saves you a little time. And since it's online, it's easy to keep up to date, and there's an audit tracking that's already embedded in it. So that becomes my audit log of what did I do for any organizations that have some kind of auditor.
Okay. So we spent about a little over 20 minutes talking about what you should do. So let's talk about the things you should never, ever do. And if you think you should do those things, come talk to us later and we'll tell you why you're wrong and you should not do them anyway. So you want to go with number one?
Yes. Okay, so number one for me is don't ever make a change directly in production if you haven't already done it in a sandbox. We all know this rule, and yet we still at some point in our lives think, to quote Shell Black, I don't play in a sandbox, I'm going to play in the street. Like you start thinking you're good enough. Don't do it. Something bad's going to happen, y'all. Just do the change in the sandbox first. Check off, validate that it works seamlessly, have your users say, yep, you did it so good, then do it in production, go have coffee, and don't, have a sleepless night worried that you did something wrong in production. So, nightmare scenario. Recently. Is this where it turns into like therapy, admin confessions?
No, I mean, it illustrates the point. So, deployed a beautiful Lightning app for some users. We're making some tweaks to it. Go on the night of deployment. This was a really big deployment. I think we were on that call for like 4 hours. We go to deploy it, and this doesn't exist. Someone went into production and deleted one of the list views that fed a component that was on the home page. So at midnight, we're rebuilding. That was just one of the things that was changed in production, we found out. So even though you think it's something minor like changing a list view name or deleting something small that you think people aren't using, it has an impact. And the impact this time was a very expensive deployment call for a client. So do not do it. Don't do it. So number 2, multi-select pick lists. I know we all have them in our orgs. None of us should have them in our orgs, ever. If you think you should build one, reconsider. Talk to Steve Molis. He will explain in emphatic terms why you shouldn't. I'm going to keep this family friendly, so I'm not going to use his terms, but just don't do it. They're really, really hard to report on. They're really difficult to maintain. Go with another solution. Check boxes, something, anything but a multi-select pick list. Just don't do it.
And that brings us to another conversation where they might come to you and say, well, I'm never going to want that to be in a report, right? It's okay if it's a multi-select pick list because I don't need it in a report. The higher level question then becomes, why do I want to put this data in Salesforce if I'm not going to report on it, right? That's the beauty of it. Everything can be reported on. So that's your pushback. That's what you say immediately. And then you just go have a coffee because you're not going to be building a multi-select pick list.
So don't tell them they're lying, even though you know they are. Just say, if you're not going to report on it, why do you need it in Salesforce? Because I guarantee you, if you agree, they're going to come back to you next month and say, remember that data that's in that multi-select pick list? I'm going to need a report on that. Then what? So just save yourself some time and aggravation and just don't do it at all. So the last thing that you shouldn't do is feel like you're in this alone. You have so many resources that you can come to get answers. There's the Askforce hashtag on Twitter. There is the community Trailblazer group where you can go and get answers, ask questions. Your community groups that meet in person once a month, optimally. The Salesforce MVPs, we're all happy to help. Don't feel like you're in this alone, because I remember when I first got started with Salesforce, I felt like I was on an island. Nobody in my office knew what I was talking about. I had to resort to Google, trying stuff out, sometimes in production, finding out it didn't work. So the community is much more robust now, and you don't have to do this by yourself. We're all resources for you.
And it's not even a secret, right? The people who are, I think, the most successful in this ecosystem, it's because they're so active in those communities and they're so willing to talk about the things they don't know and ask questions. And it comes full circle, right? Like, we're here paying it forward to you. Every one of these never do's, it's because we did it and we're so sorry. Yeah. And we want to make sure y'all don't do it. Yeah. And so for every person here who feels like, oh, I don't want to bring that up, it's embarrassing or blah, 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 I guarantee I've done it. Toya probably did it.
I did it.
We did it.
I've done all the things.
So don't worry about it.
Don't do it. So we have a couple minutes left for questions. If anybody has one, we'll run down with the mic.
Just raise your hand. Oh, I see. Oh. I see you. I see you. Oh, thank you.
What was that? So why do you offer multi-select fields as an option?
We don't work for Salesforce, so...
I don't either. Next question.
I like that question. Yeah, we don't work for Salesforce. We're not responsible for that. Sorry.
Didn't you have a trailhead thing you want to tell people about?
Oh,
Next question.
Do.
Is Field Trip a free app?
It is. It is free. 100%. I think I saw a hand up here. This gentleman right here. This lady, and then this gentleman.
You use the term freemium. What does that mean?
So that they offer free editions, and then if you want to upgrade to more advanced features, then that's offered at a paid subscription price.
Hello, you mentioned what you need in terms of additions, but what do we need in terms of support? What do you recommend there for customer support?
That's a really good question. So I would turn it back and ask you, like, how many people are on your Salesforce team? Are you the whole shebang?
30.
30 people do Salesforce for you, or 30 people in your company?
Users, actually.
Okay. How many admins or developers do you have?
Uno.
That guy. Okay. Then I would look to my friend and say, what do you need? And if you're not getting it from the community, if you're maybe local, whatever your region is, doesn't have a user group, consider starting one. We'll come. And there's always the premium support that Salesforce offers, and they actually have certain tiers within Salesforce's support that will do some of the building for you, or help you troubleshoot. That's been one of the ways that we've helped kind of offload that burden, unless you want to hire more people.
We just got one guy.
All right, just checking.
All right, we're done. So now what? So we mentioned Trailblazer community groups a lot in this presentation. There is a Trailhead, brand new, that came out this week on Trailblazer community groups, where you can go and learn more. So you can definitely go to trailhead.salesforce.com. Just search for Trailblazer community groups, and they'll have some information about the MVP program, about community groups, and then how you can go and find some in your area.
Yep, it's 20 minutes, so everybody can do it today.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Well, thank you so much for
Thanks for
listening to
coming.
us.